If you ever give up looking for me, you can find me sometimes in a really kind of dirty, dusty, used bookstore. There's lots of feral cats running around. It smells like a litter box. It's perfect. It's on the corner of Claremont and Buford Highway. And right in the back, there's a spiritual, esoteric section. And often I will go there and I will sit on the floor and I will just start pulling things off of the shelf. And a while ago, I pulled this little thing out, and it was called New Horizons. And it was by a guy named Ernest Holmes. And I thought, I've heard of him before. And when I looked at it, it was put out by the Science of Mind publications in the early 70s. And they were just these little pamphlets that were excerpts of Ernest Holmes' writings. This particular book only happened to be quotes of his that were not found in any of his books, but were extracted from sermons and talks that he had given over the years. And so I'm sitting on the floor, and I start to laugh because I come across a quote of Ernest Holmes that I have never heard or never read before in any other connotation in any of his publications. And he said, "You can never get out of a bag what is not in it." You can never get out of a bag what is not in it. Repeat after me. You can never get out of a bag what is not in it. Now substitute you for I. I can never get out of a bag what is not in it. Oh my God, how much energy have we expended trying to get something out of a bag that doesn't exist? And he went on to say, nothing will ever evolve. Nothing will ever evolve that is not first involved. You can never get out of a bag what is not in it. Nothing will ever evolve that is not first involved. And I just marched up and bought this little baby. I just thought that was priceless. Because it speaks so clearly about the determination that you and I have in regards to the quality of our experience. And I don't know if you've been like me on your journey. There have been, I will admit, vast amounts of time where I have searched feverishly into empty bags, trying to find meaning and purpose and resolution, only to discover that that's not the way that life works. Life is not external and then internal. Life is first internal. And then what takes place inside of us, inside mind, then we began to see and experience in the realm of the external. And this idea of being first involved before there's any evolution within us, reminds us all of the time of the various catchphrases that we hear, the one, you got to be in it to win it, the old joke about Bernadette who cries out to God, "God, please let me win the lottery. My family is suffering." And the lottery announcement comes and Bernadette didn't win. And she pleads even more to God, and she says, "Please, God, please let me win the lottery. My children are suffering. They have no food. We need help. Please, please, please." The lottery announcement comes, and she doesn't win. And finally, she shakes her fist to the air angrily and says, "How could thou forsake me? Don't you know how I have devoted my life to you?" And God interrupts Bernadette's diatribe, and he says, "Bernadette, buy a ticket." You have to be involved. You have to be involved in order to evolve. There is a requirement of participation. And what I also read from Ernest was that the universe looks back at us at the level from which we look at it. So there is an even exchange. There is always an even exchange. And if you do not like the exchange that you are receiving, you are not at the mercy of that. You are actually empowered to do something about that by the way in which you choose your inward thoughts and by the way in which you get involved in your own personal evolution. It's maddening for any of us to expect that the quality of experience that comes from the quality of experience that we have when, let's say, we study fine literature. Fine literature like Shakespeare or the Upanishads or the Tao Te Ching or the Bible or even our own science of mind, when our noses are in the National Enquirer. I mean, it's utter insanity to want a life of adventure an explorer's heart, a taste of expansion, to feel a longing to see something in this world, and then never leave the walls of the house of one's excuses. It is wasteful to let the infinite nature of our life become paralyzed and stagnant over anything that happened previous to this very moment. I'm not talking about even 38 years ago. I'm talking about what happened 15 minutes ago. To become paralyzed and stagnant over any sense of separation or discord. And what that shows us is that every single moment in that seeking path that Reverend Scotchy so beautifully referenced, in that seeking journey, every single moment of that is important. I think for us, what happens sometimes is we want the crescendo. It dawned on me this week that it's rarely the big things that make the big differences in our life. I don't know if you quite understand what I mean by that. It's rarely the crescendos happening all the time, because crescendos don't happen all the time. Can you imagine going to the symphony and all that the orchestra played were the crescendos over and over and over again? At some point you'd go, stop! Can you imagine going to the movies and the only thing that you see up on the screen is the last few minutes, the climax of the movie that reveals all, and that's all that you see? Can you imagine opening up a book and only reading the last few pages of the book and missing all of the other storyline and all of the other intricacies, all of the moments, all of the relationships that led to the culmination of the end of the book? And that's life. And yet, aren't we fascinating creatures that what we want and what we crave are the crescendos, when in actuality, what you are experiencing now in this moment, I will tell you, even now, sitting on the chair, breathing, the ability to breathe is a moment that should be cherished. Because there's people who woke up who didn't breathe today. They're not here. So you start to see the quantitative quality of life itself. And that everything that you and I take for granted is a culmination of that which is a part of the seeker's path. You can never get out of a bag what is not in it. Nothing will ever evolve that is not first involved. He went on to say, but since there is a continual process of involution, meaning since there is a continual process of your opportunity to be involved, then there is a corresponding and continual process of evolution, your ability to evolve. You get that, right? There's never a want, there is never a lack for an opportunity for you to get involved in you. And all this stuff about, oh, it's too late for me, that is self-imposed. There is nothing about your spiritual involvement that has anything to do with any excuse of age or heritage or economic bracket. None of that applies to spiritual involvement. In this moment right now, you could literally download something to be grateful for, and you would become spiritually involved, which would lead and contribute to your evolution. And so as we start to look at that, it tells us then that wherever we are, we must go deeper. Wherever you are, even if you're deep, go deeper. Even if you're deep squared, go deeper. Meaning that there is never a time, there is never a place where we stop. And so I've heard, enough with the seeking, just find, for God's sake. But that's fine. That's fine to find. But here's the thing. It's once you have found whatever it is that you have been seeking, the story doesn't end there. The journey doesn't cease there. That once you and I have an acquisition or a manifestation of something that we have been seeking, then guess what? The cycle starts all over again. And so we are perpetual seekers and we are perpetual finders. What I love about this particular scripture, it says, ask and it shall be given, seek and ye shall find, knock and the door shall be opened unto you. What that is a template for prayer. It's like if prayer was a triangle, those would be the corners of the triangle. To ask, to seek, and to knock. We're very good at asking. The seeking is the action part of the prayer. The seeking is the part where you and I have to get involved in what it is that we say that we want. The knocking is simply opening the door to the realization that it's already there. But the seeking really makes up most of the meat of our experience in this life. So you get to look at, how am I in regards to being a seeker? And here's the component of being a seeker. You have two choices. One is you seek with your fingers crossed. Like seeking, ooh, I hope you find it. Seeking, we're rooting for you. That's not what the Scripture said. The Scripture said, seek and ye what? You shall find. It's definitive. It's declarative. It says point blank that if you seek, you're going to find. You are. Not maybe, but you are. And so if that is to become our reality in regards to the deepening of our spiritual involvement, then what kind of a seeker must you be? You must be a seeker then who already knows as you begin the journey of seeking. And what is it that you're supposed to know? You're going to find it. The beautiful thing, though, about being mature with that is that as you embark upon your perpetual seeking and you combine it with your knowing, I give up how that's supposed to look like. Because when we become attached, when we begin to compartmentalize and structure it and create rigid guidelines by how we are supposed to find it, then we miss the point. But when you seek from a place of knowing, then we're this beautiful, malleable, flexible being of energy that moves wherever we are guided to move. And even though it looks almost ridiculous or perhaps even insane or is against the grain of what everybody else is saying that you must do, you go along with that intuitively anyway, and you begin to find what it is. You and I begin to find what it is as long as we stay attuned to that. But you have to seek. You have to acknowledge the seeking. And again, I love when Reverend Scotchy's here. You're so solid. Don't you love his solidity? Is that a word? Your solid nature. There you go. Because he reminded us again this morning of the fact that our seeking is birthed from a divine discontent. And all that means is you outgrow. And as you outgrow, we move on to the next thing. Growing, everybody wants to grow, right? Well, in order to grow, you have to first outgrow. And so the outgrowing of whatever experience that we're having is the thing that is pushing us onto the seeker's path. But your requirement as a student of mental science, as someone who understands the internal component of the quality of your life, your requirement, my requirement, is to always know that even on the journey of that seeking, we must carry with us a sense of knowing. The only way that I know that strengthens, that you build up the muscle of your knowing, the only way is through experience. And how do you and I gain experience? By putting ourselves out there. By becoming involved in your spiritual evolution. It was exactly 5 years ago today, before you even knew I existed. I was walking on the Camino de Santiago across the country of Spain, and today was the day that I came upon the 100-kilometer mark, meaning that I only had 100 kilometers to go before I reached Santiago de Compostela. That I had marched all the way, dragged myself all the way across Spain, and had gotten down to the last final days of the journey. Interesting about the 100-kilometer mark. Because at the 100-kilometer mark, people who want to get recognition as a Camino pilgrim, meaning that you get what's called a Compostela, you get a certificate that shows that you are forever a Camino pilgrim. You can still get one of those if you start the journey at the 100-kilometer mark. The rest of us, we didn't like those people so much. The ones of us who started in France and crossed the Pyrenees and been going for 27, 28 days, all of a sudden here comes this influx of people. And to hear them complain, wanted to take my stick and hit them. Wanted to just whack. you know? And I think to myself, that's very indicative sometimes of you and I in regards to the way we go about our seeking. And nothing against those people, and I'm sure everybody has their story and their experience, and that's fine. I jokingly use that. But it correlates very beautifully with what I call spiritual bypassing. And spiritual bypassing is where you and I, in our seeking journey, are trying to avoid the mess, trying to avoid the work. More importantly, it's really this. Spiritual bypassing is predicated upon trying to avoid pain at all cost. And if you have confused this teaching with the idea that once you become a student of mental science, you will never experience pain anymore, then you have mistaken. You have gotten some false information. Because I would never lie to you. I would never lie to you and say, come into our inner sanctum. Happiness prevails forever. Happiness is there, but what you start to learn is happiness is a choice. Happiness is a choice. And you and I then are constantly, perpetually working on removing the barriers of that choosing. What could possibly be a barrier to you and I choosing happiness? I will tell you firsthand, it's the idea that you don't feel that you deserve to be happy. And you may not even know that consciously. That may be something so buried deep within your subconscious that you don't even know why you perpetually sabotage yourself over and over again. That you push away the very good you say that you want. But the beautiful thing about this teaching, if we understand it and become involved at depth, it's then that you and I don't run or avoid anything, because what do we know about the anything? We know that the pain, we know that the discord in and of itself is simply an illusional separation that we have chosen to make real. And so if something is an illusional thing that we have chosen to make real, don't you think we need to deal with that illusion before we bypass and move on to, hey, meaning the idea of walk into the pain, breathe into the pain, see what the pain is all about, explore what the pain means, and begin to embark upon self-inquiry to discover, why have I given this pain so much power? Why have I allowed myself to attach myself into this in thinking that it is the end-all, be-all master of my experience? If you and I don't do that work, then guess what we're perpetually running from? The illusion of the pain, which only continues to manifest and get bigger and to follow us. And it doesn't matter what city we move to. It doesn't matter how many boyfriends or girlfriends we get trying to avoid that pain. It doesn't matter how much you self-medicate or how you overeat or how many drugs that you take in order to avoid the pain. The pain is still what? There until you and I get to the core of why we have an allegiance to it to begin with. And the beautiful thing then about being involved at depth in your spirituality is to begin to understand that when you greet the pain, when you breathe into the pain, you then take your power back from the pain. And instead of the power being your master, you have switched places and you are now ready. You are now ready to take mastery and ownership of your life. How are you and I ever going to understand what that feels like unless we're willing to stand in that place, the place that's uncomfortable, the place that is discord, and allow ourselves to take our power back? To me, that is the path of the true seeker. And all that I can tell you about that is I can't walk that path for you. The person to your right or to your left can't walk that path for you. And as much as we love other people, we can't do that for them. What we can do is we can stand in a place of knowing that says, yes, seek, and you will find. You will find it. But in your seeking, you must retain a sense of knowing about who you are. You must retain a sense of self. And I'm not talking about the earthly self. I'm talking about the soul self. the soul self of you. When we can teach that and apply that and do that, then all this kind of spiritual bypassing begins to dissolve. We're no longer burying our heads in the sand. We're no longer running from conflict. Isn't it amazing, the fight-flight syndrome? You know, conflict or discord or pain comes up and we're ready sometimes. And other times we're, you know, but the spiritual maturity part of us says, no, what you do is you stand in that and you transcend it. See, the true seeker who knows that we will all find, and I will stand on the guarantee of that. You will find it. Hopefully you'll find it in this lifetime. Hopefully you'll find it today. And what you find today is that regardless of whatever goes down in the world of effect, whatever goes down, you are okay. You are more than okay. Because what you are is a part of that, which is God. So spiritual bypassing, I found this interesting blog, and this gentleman wrote, true spirituality is not a high, not a rush, not an altered state. It has been fine to romance it for a while, but our times call for something far more real, grounded and responsible, something radically alive and naturally integral, something that shakes us to our very core until we stop treating spiritual deepening as something to dabble in here and there. Authentic spirituality is not some little flicker or buzz of knowingness, not a psychedelic blast through or a mellow hanging out on some exalted plane of consciousness, not a bubble of immunity, but a vast fire of liberation. An exquisitely fitting crucible and sanctuary providing both heat and light for the healing and the awakening that we need. I love that. It's not a fad. It's not a trend. True spirituality is a way of life. And when we began to look at that, the first thing then that can come out of our mouth is, how do I become more involved? How do I become more involved in my spiritual path? And every day, I kid you not, every single day, there is a new level of involvement. There is a new opportunity. There is a new person. There is a new like mind. There is a new wave of information that you and I have not been privy to because we haven't been conscious of it. And all of that involvement says to you, do you want to evolve? Do you really want to evolve? Then get involved. Get involved in the solution of your life. There are things that go down here all the time. This thing with I squared. All that was required of anybody was to fill out this piece of paper and know that this piece of paper and your name and information would be given to a practitioner. That's it. And that practitioner does spiritual mind affirmative prayer for you every single day for the month of July. That's all that's required. Yesterday, I went through about 150 names, and I started to disperse all the 150 names among the practitioners who have signed up to participate as well. And as I was going through that, I thought, really? Only 150 people signed up? How are you going to get involved? How are you going to get involved in anything unless you and I pay attention and make choices? And so as we began to look at that, as we ask and seek and knock, we began to understand the personal responsibility that comes with our evolvement. I found this. There is a Tibetan parable that says if we put a tablespoon of salt in a glass of water and drink it, the water will taste terrible and bitter. But if we were to stir that same tablespoon of salt into an enormous, clear, blue mountain lake, the water in the lake would remain sweet. We would not taste the salt at all. The problem, the Tibetans say, is not the salt that you and I are given. The real problem is how spacious is the container into which the salt is poured. Did you hear that? That was you going, spacious, make myself more spacious, make myself more spacious. How spacious, meaning how willing is the container of your soul to get involved in your evolvement, your evolution? The question is not never, ever, whether or not we will be given challenges and limitations. We will. The question is, how will we hold them? How will we be changed? How will they shape us? What will we bring to the healing of them? What, if anything, will be born in its place? How spacious are you? And by you, I'm talking about the soul of you. And we really start to see, we have to start to glimpse the preciousness of those moments. And so often we want to just look at the crescendo and we forget all of the other beautiful notes and all of the other beautiful words that led up to that experience. I want to remind you of something, and that is that every single thing that has happened to you up until this point is sacred. Everything. Yep, even that. Every single thing. And I'll tell you why. Because all of those stringed together moments caused you to have the divine discontent, caused you to seek something, caused you to move away from a situation, caused you to say no, caused you to get up out of whatever dreariness, of whatever smallness, whatever abuse, whatever addiction, caused you to do something to get out of that and become involved in life again. And then it didn't happen one time. And then it happens again, and it happens again. Seek, 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 and you will find, and then seek, and you will find, and then seek, and you will find. It's my new rap song. You see? It's perpetual. It is perpetual. It is ongoing. You can never get out of a bag what is not in it. I just want to leave that with you today, because I think more than anything, that will support us in stopping any kind of insane activity about trying to get something from someone else. In our spiritual laws class, which finished last week, there was one law, and it was called the law of sacrifice. And everybody goes, I don't like that title, because we're not real big on sacrifice, except at the end of the year when we need a virgin in order to move to the next year. But I'm kidding. For those of you at home, I'm kidding. But the law of sacrifice, and we gave that up because there were no virgins. No, I'm just kidding. And the live stream goes down. But what that law says is stop expecting something for nothing. Because if you are wanting something without having an involvement or an investment in it, then you are going against the grain of spiritual law. Sacrifice meaning something like, if you are a concert pianist, want to be a concert pianist, then how much of your time, quote, quote, sacrifice, do you give to the craft of learning to be that? If you're a Michael Phelps and you're a swimmer and you want to be in the Olympics, you don't just wish to be that and then show up on the day of the event and expect miraculous things to happen. There is a, quote, quote, sacrifice or an investment or an involvement in the continuing development of that particular craft. So the law of sacrifice is saying to us, not only do you have to give something in order to receive something back, but you also have to create a vacuum, a space. In order to create a vacuum and a space for something to come in, you have to let something go. And so what are you willing, and again, I hear the word sacrifice with new ears. What are you willing to sacrifice, meaning invest in order to be in the even exchange of energy that the universe requires for you and I to be compliant to be compliant with the good that is there. Seek and ye shall find. You will find. You are finding, you have found, and you will continue to find. And I want you to know now that as you embark upon the next level of your seeking, that you do so with a resurgence and an allegiance to the idea of knowing that this is already worked out. Everything has already been created, and the only thing that exists is God. So if you'll close your eyes with me this morning. We are all seekers. We are all finders. And in this one beautiful moment, we move from the varying respective trails of our seeking and our finding to collaborate in one harmonious moment. We are in unison in this moment. And in this unison, in this oneness right now, there is an agreement. And that agreement is that from this moment forward, as we seek, we do so not with a sense of angst, not with a sense of hope, but with a sense of knowing. The moment that we allow that within the very soul of our being is the moment that everything changes. When I know that my good already exists, when I know that the universe is unfolding in perfect and divine order, when I know that regardless of appearances, there is oneness, when I know that whatever it is I desire and seek for in my faithfulness, I will find, when I know that, then every single thing in my life merges and aligns, strengthens and rises like the phoenix out of the ash to remind me of how true, how powerful, and how infinite I am. Those words just spoken become our individual and collective affirmation. And as we own that at our individual levels, we're also going to own that collectively. We're going to own it. We anchor it in, and we stand tall and assured, allowing ourselves to just savor and breathe the truth, and to relax, and to allow the joy, a sense of breathing room, as we have been so beautifully willing to stand in the pain. For this, I know, and for this, I am grateful. And for this, I see and declare all of this as being true for each and every one of us. And from that place of just utter allowing, I now open myself up as the channel, the vessel, for that to take place. And as I speak the I, I'm also speaking for you. I know this to be so. And letting this now anchor in, we take a deep cleansing breath, a breath of agreement, and as together we say, and so it is.